push for several years, but now it's gaining an insane amount of momentum and steam. But it really goes back several years. And the goal is to have a regulated internet, which means the end of online privacy and anonymity. And they want to do this by having people link a government-issued ID to their internet access and internet activity.
Who is
so
they?
In the U.S., it's come from the government, but it's not. A lot of government policy, whether it's about this or something else, doesn't come organically from the government. It comes from think tanks. It comes from groups like that, or even the WEF, the World Economic Forum, that are then given to politicians, and politicians legislate and enact it, and then the state enforces it. But it's not necessarily the ideas of the legislature and the state itself, these policies. And more often than not, these think tanks are funded by corporations and billionaires and all of these guys. And they also own the politicians, so it's really them creating the policy. And they use the state as an enforcer to force it on the public, right? So that's, I guess, the global public-private partnership is what my colleague Ian Davis calls them. They, right? And I think it's pretty fair. He puts the BIS at the top, by the way, of the pyramid. This policy, one of the earliest iterations of it, at least in the United States, was during the Obama administration. They called it a driver's license for the internet. The idea of, in order to access the internet, when you set up, internet connection at your house, the internet service provider links all of your internet traffic to your ID. And in doing so, the government and the signals intelligence arm or intelligence agency of the government then has access to not just everything you're posting and writing online, but also everything you read and consume online.
And everything you buy.
And everything you buy. Totally. I mean, this whole push is completely related to ending financial anonymity and financial privacy as well. It's a completely interrelated thing. And I've done pretty extensive deep dives on this going back to probably like 2021, because it's very tied up with how they're likely to force this regulated internet on the populace, because they're not just going to be like, let's do this now. I mean, people aren't going to go along with it. So they need some sort of event that gets people angry and afraid and panicking in order to stick it through. So basically, this is going to be folded into, I guess, what I would call a Cyber Patriot Act. The Patriot Act being the legislation pushed through in the U.S. after September 11th, 2001. Right. A lot of which wasn't necessarily related to anything to do with 9/11, but was a huge power grab by the state taking advantage opportunistically of the panic after 9/11. So they need some sort of event like that to ram all this stuff through. But the plans have been on the books for a very long time, and it's not just the U.S., it's really everywhere. I mean, I think in the UK you have something called like the Online Safety Bill that's quite similar.
We have so much stuff. We have so much stuff now.
Yeah.
So yes, we have the Online Safety Bill, which was the death of end-to-end encryption. But we've also had this week, Rishi Sunak come out and say he wants to restrict social media for anyone under 16 as well, which is entirely unenforceable. But it feels like I'm.
Well, you have to link it then to your government-issued ID so they can verify what your age is. They have all these different excuses.
Exactly.
A lot of it, like the Online Safety Bill, they'll say, "Oh, it's about protecting children." But really, it's about ending encryption, which law enforcement in the UK and the US have been trying to do so hard for years and years and years. I mean, Bill Barr, who was Attorney General under Trump in the U.S., was like, that was his main policy goal, was to end encryption. And he talked about it all the time, but a lot of people didn't really pay attention, I guess. But in the UK, it's a similar push because, of course, as I'm sure you're aware, the UK national security state and the U.S. national security state are very intertwined, specifically signals intelligence, the whole Five Eyes alliance, which is obviously includes more countries, but it's UK and US dominated, obviously. It's not like Australia and New Zealand are running the show there, So
I don't even think it's the UK running the show. I think it is the US running the show, and we may be part of it, but we're really subservient to the US.
Well, it to a big extent, yeah, but then you also have a major financial center that you could argue, has a lot of the City of London, right? There's a lot of speculation about, Britain still holding a significant amount of the seat of global financial power, but I'll leave that discussion for another time because that's probably not, probably have to prep a little more for that kind of conversation, honestly. But So in terms of what we're talking about with government, regulation of the internet and all of this, it's coming, right? We're already seeing the first signs of it here. There's an obvious push to censor more speech and link people's speech to their ID and have it more surveillable than ever before. Gutting encryption, why do they want to do that? So they can read everything that you say and all your transactions, follow them all. There's a similar effort in crypto and specifically with Bitcoin to criminalize mixers and criminalize any sort of service that affords you increased financial privacy. And that's only going to escalate.
They have criminalized mixers because, I know of at least 3 cases where people are either tied up for multi-year lawsuits for the creation of mixers. They're money launderers.
No, right. So it's already started, but what I'm trying to say is that, where they want to take this, if anyone uses a mixer, they can go after you. That's what they want to set up. They don't want anyone to have financial privacy or online privacy anymore. And that's what part of this agenda about a regulated internet is. And it directly ties in with stuff like a central bank digital currency, at least what people are concerned about a CBDC for, which is the surveillance capability and the programmability aspect. It's all tied up with this effort to regulate the internet, which isn't really fair to say it's regulating the internet. It's more like taking complete control of the internet, a complete coup of the internet for unprecedented surveillance and control of people's online lives. At the same time that you have these same entities pushing for people to live their lives online as much as possible as part of the fourth industrial revolution and all of this other stuff. Like we saw in the COVID era, we're locking down. You can't go out and do stuff in the physical world. You have to be online as much as possible. Education's online. Work is online. As much of your life as possible has to be online now because you can't go in person to the bank. You can't go in person to this. You should order your groceries through your phone and all of this stuff, So they're pushing us more and more into the digital realm and at the same time preparing to take more control of the digital realm than they have now by a significant degree. And that's not a coincidence. I'm sorry if you think that's coincidental. That's very naive of you.
Let me just ask you something. So on this, I'm following the path of everything you're saying and agreeing and recognizing it's coming. I always try and think, why? Why has it happened? Is it an organic system of bad incentives which appeal to the greed of certain individuals that drive us towards these bad decisions, like the centralization and control of power?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it some evil plan? Is it malice? Is it, I try and understand, and I always come out on the side of thinking, but it's just a system of poor incentives, the way humans are, the way we act, our greed that drives us towards this. But is there a deep state of malice?
Well, okay, so obviously when you're talking about the powers that be, there's competing factions, right? Not all of them agree, but they agree about a lot of the stuff. And a lot of the way these people operate isn't that similar to how rulers operated hundreds of years ago. They want complete and control of money and political power and power more broadly, because then they can do whatever they want for themselves and have a double standard for themselves, but force other people to live a certain way to support their lifestyle, right? And essentially what we're seeing here is an effort to use technology to entrench that in unprecedented ways so that there's no more need to worry about the peasants revolting, right? I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. So as an example, this push for a regulated internet and the end of online anonymity and all of that is directly related to the fact that it's a mathematical inevitability that our debt-based monetary system will collapse at some point, and that the banking system, particularly Wall Street and its global equivalents, have engaged in an unprecedented degree of malfeasance and corruption and insane financial gambling activities. And just like 2008, right? That's going to explode at some point. But in 2008, people knew it was the banks and they were mad at the banks, weren't they? So if you're the banks and that's going to happen again, and you're in bed with the intelligence agencies and the government, or in the case of the U.S., you own the central bank, right? You don't want that to happen again. So how do you how do you find a way to blame somebody else for the financial system imploding? And when you bring the financial system back, what do these people, people like Jamie Dimon and all these top bankers, like, what is their ideal scenario for like money and how people interact with and use money? Well, being able to grift as much as you want and take as much as you want from the people under you without them knowing or complaining, because I mean, that's what they've been doing for decades, right? Wall Street. So they want to keep doing that. They don't want to change their behavior. So they want to find a way to be able to steal from the underclass as much as possible without the underclass complaining or revolting, and control how they spend their money, and control their financial and other behavior so that they can maintain their place on the top. So what we're having is the engineering of a neo-feudal society where you have the small upper class and then a massive underclass that the upper class can manipulate and control and do whatever they want with as they see fit. And so that's what I think the ambition of a lot of these various initiatives we're seeing for unprecedented control and surveillance are aimed at. And the goal is to use technology, whether it's AI or any of these other emerging technologies, to be able to do that, because obviously there's so much more of us than there are of them. And so in order to scale what they want to scale, to be able to deal with the huge difference in size between their class and our class, they feel like, they need these emerging technologies. They need AI.